So previously we talked about why we need algorithms to tune automatically. It's because spin qubit arrays and quantum dot arrays are getting more and more complex, and you need a kind of quite a few gate electrodes to tune even a single qubit to a well-controlled qubit. And so, if you want to do that for a larger array, you will probably need some kind of automation because doing it by hand will rapidly get uh, very boring. So we covered why we need these algorithms. Now let's see how what those algorithms might look like and what we can rely on and what parts we can automate. So one example from Iana Darulova that's been published in Physirev Applied recently used a method to do it which goes in a kind of flowchart and tries to do successive levels of vetting of the device to figure out if the device will indeed make a good qubit at all. And at the end, it tries to then, knowing that it is a good qubit, use the information gleaned from previous steps to actually tune those gates such that you trap the correct number of electrons. Let's go through it a little bit slowly. So first, you would load a device into your fridge and you would do some quick tests. One test that we would always do is to do a gate leakage test, which is to tell if your gate is functioning properly or whether it was blown up, perhaps during bonding or some other time, or whether it is, touching some other gate, in which case those two would not be independent gate voltages you can work with. The second test you would do is a kind of initial quality assessment. This can take the form of many things depending on what kind of qubit you have. For example, you could test if you can actually form a channel, if you can